This is my boy. Shane Austin was a ornery boy. I always say he lived a fear factor personality. He never turned down a dare. But he enjoyed life. He had a large group of friends, very diverse group of friends. His motto was rock on. So that's why we tattooed it on our arms.
That's my son right there, with the cigarette hanging out of his mouth. Each one of these individuals from this state and all the other states in our nation have made the ultimate sacrifice for this nation. They're all volunteers. They all knew the possibility that faced them, and they made the commitment to this nation.
With the exhibit travels throughout the state of Kansas, and we sometimes go across the border to Missouri or surrounding states. But I travel through schools or the VFWs or American Legions or fairs, and it's just basically to let everyone know that our loved ones aren't forgotten, that our freedom isn't free. It's just a great way to educate the community, to know, to always honor and remember our veterans that are still with us. Sometimes their true battle starts when they come back home, and it's up to us in our loved ones' memories to thank and honor and remember all our heroes.
First off, I want to welcome everybody to our post, American Legion Post 163 here in Marysville. It's an honor to have this memorial here today and our honored guest with us. I want to recognize two Gold Star mothers in the room. Would Deb Lucas and Dodie Berg stand up, please? Give them a hand, please. Deb is the one that drove the vehicle here yesterday, and I can tell you she was quite inspired to see the community come out for this, as well as the Frankfort community when we went through this by the school out there. So they're very appreciative. And also I'd like to have a special thanks to our Legion riders for braving the cold, going out south of town to ride in. I didn't think you guys were going to do it, but we appreciate it. I know our plans were to do the full ride, but still coming out, we appreciate what you guys have done. Also, real quick, I want to thank our sons and our riders for their donations to bring this here to our post for everyone to enjoy and take the time to see. We'll have the mayor up briefly here to give a welcome, but before we do, we're going to have the benediction by our post chaplain, Phil Thomas. If you would, please bow your heads and remove your head cover.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for your grace, allowing us today to remember our fallen men and women from our lives that have succumbed to battle in defense of our freedom and our way of life. Lord, bless and keep this land that we may align ourselves with other nations to stamp out the evils that try to prevail in our world. Provide protection for our God-given rights of freedom and the pursuit of happiness. Bless the families and friends of those who are lost to us, here and in our allied nations. Fill them with spiritual peace and understanding that the pain of the sacrifice was for a noble cause, the betterment of civilization, betterment for our generation and for those yet unborn. Protect our active service members wherever they are, and those that with constant vigil protect and serve our local communities. Dear God, guide and bless the leaders of our nation and provide them with patience, wisdom, and understanding that you say to pray for, that through your grace they will enable settling of conflict through peaceful means. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Phil. Now we'll have a welcome by our Mayor, Carla Grun. Mayor? Test, test.
Okay. It is indeed an honor and a privilege to welcome you to Marysville and specifically to view the Remembering Our Fallen exhibit of Kansans who sacrificed all for the freedoms we embrace today. I am grateful for American Legion Commander Dave Oldie and the American Legion SMNR Post 163 for bringing this exhibit to our community. The residents of Marysville are very proud of our city, but we are even more proud of our servicemen and women who are faithfully serving and our veterans who have faithfully served our country. Thank you for your service and sacrifice, the men and women in uniform and their families, and especially those who we honor today with this exhibit. May we never forget.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Our guest speaker this morning is Lonnie Ford. Now, Lonnie, I have to tell you, I tried to research your bio on the internet. I don't know if you're a yoga instructor or a weight loss coach, but I know you're an inspiration to everybody here. Lonnie, he's our special guest because he wasn't the one that actually started it, but it was his heartfelt letter to the Omaha World Herald in 2010 about worrying that the world will forget the sacrifices of his son, Sergeant Joshua Ford, who was killed 4 years prior to that date. Lonnie is quoted as saying, "We share that common bond. Unless we talk to each other and try to help each other out, who's going to do it? No one understands the feelings, the tears that were shed here today." And with that, I will welcome you up here, Mr. Ford.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to start off with a couple of poems. First one is titled "When a Soldier Dies" by Cliff Kessinger, who was a proud Gold Star father. When a soldier dies many miles from home, leaving family and friends all alone, who will go to where they lie when a soldier dies? When a soldier dies, we ponder then, what might they have been? What they have done, what they might have been. In our grief, we simply go numb when a soldier dies. When a soldier dies, we can measure the pain. Did they fight for freedom? Did they die in vain? The answers are important, you can't deny. To these questions we ask when a soldier dies. When a soldier dies, we think of a way to remember forever the year and day. They gave their life, we feel with a sigh. We'll never forget when a soldier dies. Enjoy your freedom, your family and fun. Stop to remember where it all came from. Freedom is triumph over evil and lies. It's paid for every time a soldier dies. Second one is called "A Hero's Welcome" by Robert Longley. Time to come home, dear brother, your tour of duty through. You've given as much as anyone could be expected to do. Just a few steps further, the smoke will start to clear. Others here will guide you. You have no need of fear. You have not failed your brothers. You clearly gave it all. And through your selfless actions, others will hear the call. So take your place of honor among those who have gone before, and know you will be remembered for now and evermore. And this is where I get emotional. Dear Dad, hey, if you're reading this, then I died in Iraq. Don't worry about me. I died serving something greater than myself. That's the way I wanted to die. You did everything you could to make me a better person, but it didn't always work. I was way too much like you for it to work. Make sure my friends know I died how I wanted. I have no regrets and no unfinished business. I died confident with how I lived my life. Love, Joshua. On July 31st, 2006, my family's life changed forever. My wife woke up at 11:30 p.m. to police lights shining through our bedroom window. I told my wife I'd go outside to see what was going on, since the house across the street had been visited by the police several times. As I opened the garage door, I saw 3 men in uniform, not police, but Army personnel. They were walking toward our front door. I knew immediately why they were there and turned and hit my fist on the hood of my pickup. After regaining my composure, I asked the three to come into our home. They introduced themselves, two military chaplains and a sergeant, who stated that they were here to inform us that my son, Joshua Ender Ford, age 20, was killed by an IED while on a convoy with the 189th Transportation Company outside of Al-Numaniyah, Iraq. Another soldier, whom they could not identify at this time, was severely injured. The chaplain stated that July had been the worst month for Nebraskans serving in Iraq, and how they had hoped that this year would be different. Then they received a phone call that informed them they had to visit another family of a fallen hero from Nebraska. The news of Joshua's death, the questions we had that the chaplains could not answer, numbs one very quickly. Thoughts of Joshua's birth, which was by emergency cesarean, due to the cord being wrapped around his neck. The little blonde-haired boy having to stand in the corner for being naughty. A teenage boy who convinces his dad to allow him to use his newly purchased inline skates without protective equipment, resulting in a broken wrist. The scared boy who totaled his dad's car in a one-vehicle wreck, and the more scared father who thought he could have lost his son. The average student in his dad's junior American history class and senior American government class refusing to take notes, but passing all the tests. The very proud young man, a very proud father in attendance, graduating from his advanced individual training at Fort Leonard Wood. The deployment ceremony held for the 189th in Wayne, the hugs and tears of goodbye, and hope that all will return safely. All those flash very quickly through your mind. The thoughts of, what do we do now? When will Josh be brought home? Did he suffer? Was he alone at the time of his death? How will I tell his sisters that their brother would not be coming home? How will his grandmother, whom Josh gave a rose at his high school graduation, and other family members react to the news? How do we deal with the press? Where will we bury Josh? How will I handle the loss of one of my children, which is not the normal order of life? The parent is supposed to die first. All of these questions make you wonder how you will get through the next few hours, days, months, and yes, even years. I knew what I had to do that night, inform my family of Josh's death. The chaplains made my wife promise that she would do all the driving that night because they were afraid I was in shock and could not handle the loss of my son in driving an automobile. My wife Linda and I spent the rest of the night and part of the next morning traveling the highways to inform my three daughters, Jessica, Aaron, and Sean, and other family members of our loss. We stopped at my mom's, where my brothers and sisters shared tears of grief and smiles, remembering the infectious smile that was always on Josh's face. When we arrived home, after spending about 9 hours on the road, we were met by many of our friends, relatives, and Brad Whelan, the National Guard recruiter who signed Josh up to serve our great nation, and many others who were there to help us deal with everything we would face over the next 10 days. We received phone calls from our elected officials telling us how proud they were of Josh and his ultimate sacrifice. They asked, what could they do to help us? Can you ask them to turn the clock back and prevent Josh's death? Meeting with my casualty assistance officer, Susan Traub, later that day, helped to answer many of our questions. We also received a visit from Adjutant General Lemke of the National Guard and others that day. One learns very quickly how the military handles the loss of one of their own. Susan spent most of the next 10 days with us. She helped me to prepare to meet the press, how to answer their questions. She helped escort Josh home from the airport and was there at his funeral. She gave us the moral support we needed to make it through this very difficult time. One day, Susan asked me how it felt to get an act of Congress passed. I looked at her with a question on my face of, what are you talking about? She told me that our request to have Josh's roommate, who was my daughter's boyfriend, accompany Josh home had been granted. Since he was not of the same rank, they usually don't allow that. My oldest daughter and the just arriving boyfriend then decided to get married while he was home. It was one wedding that I could not bring myself to attend. My grief outweighed my happiness for them. Josh was brought home 1 week from the time of his death. Unlike today, Josh was brought home on a commercial passenger plane. As we waited for the passengers to disembark, I became very concerned that they were very quiet and tried not to look at us. We were later told that the pilot had informed them as they were getting ready to land, they were bringing home another fallen hero to be buried. We were allowed to go down on the tarmac at Eppley Airport as they brought his casket from the plane. We had 5 members of the military with us who helped move Josh from the plane to the waiting hearse. Watching them make that slow salute to honor Josh brought tears to my eyes. We had a police escort by the Omaha motorcycle officers to Blair in the pouring rain, and from there to Pender by the Thurston County Sheriff's Office and the Pender Police Force. Upon arriving in Pender at 2 a.m., we were greeted by about 100 people standing in the rain to honor Josh. What a magnificent show of support for Josh and his family. We buried Josh on August 10, 2006 with full military honors. Josh was promoted to the rank of sergeant and awarded the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, and many other medals for his service. So many people showed up to honor Josh that many had to stand outside the church and listen to the service on a loudspeaker. The sergeant who escorted Josh home later that day told me that he had to tell some generals where they could go. I bet that was the first time he was able to do that to a general. The population of Pender probably doubled that day, with the streets lined with people holding American flags to honor Josh as we drove to the cemetery. Several businesses let their employees leave their workstations to honor Josh. One thing that I remember vividly, on the way to the cemetery, there was a World War II veteran who had not gotten out of his wheelchair for years. He struggled to stand up, and he saluted Josh as we passed by. More than 170 Patriot Guard riders showed up to shield us by lining the sidewalk from the school where we gathered as a family and received our gold stars from General Lemke to the church where the service was held. They were holding American flags to honor another fallen hero and to protect us from the Westboro Baptist Church protesters, or what a lot of people like to call uglies, that were there. My family is now a member of a group that no one wants to join, the Gold Star families. Those families, all those individuals over there, who have lost a family member while serving on active duty. Today, 13 Nebraska families of National Guard members belong to this group, along with many other Nebraskan families who have served in other branches of the U.S. military. My son Josh was an average kid. Until he was a junior in high school, he was a couch potato who loved to play video games, watch movies, draw, and spend time with his friends, one of which was in the convoy at the time of his death. One day in February of his junior year, he asked if he could go talk to the National Guard recruiter, a good friend of mine who was visiting the school to talk to students about the benefits of joining the Guard. I was surprised at their request, having no idea that Josh was interested in the military. I asked if he wanted me to go with him. His answer was, "Old man, I don't need you. I can do it all myself." A half hour later, I signed the papers for him to become a member of the Nebraska Army National Guard. I was a very proud father. Josh went to boot camp that summer at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, returning home 40 pounds lighter, a very proud young man, no longer just a boy. After his senior year, he attended his advanced individual training at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri, where he learned to drive those big trucks, which he was so proud to do. Josh was enrolled in Wayne State College after graduating from Pender High School, hoping to major in art when he received his deployment orders, notifying him that the 189th Transportation Company would be taking part in Operation Iraqi Freedom. We attended the send-off at Wayne State College along with 5,000 patriotic Americans. We shared tears of hope and, yes, concern for the safe return of all the members of the 189th. One of his fellow soldiers promised that day to bring Josh home safely, but I knew that he could not keep that promise. Josh was a truck driver with the 189th and was very proud of the job that his unit was doing. During their deployment, they set the record for the most miles driven at that time. He was constantly telling me how close of a group the unit was. He often described them as his second family. Josh even convinced a couple of his friends to join the Guard. His closest friend, Jeff Meyer, was 2 trucks ahead of him in the convoy. When Josh's truck was hit, Jeff jumped out of his truck before it was even stopped so he could be with Josh as his soul left his earthly body and went to heaven. One of Josh's main concerns while serving in Iraq was the children that they encountered. Josh had a love of children and wanted to have several of his own in the future. As I have talked to members of the 189th, I've learned several things about Josh. First, he was a PX Ranger. When preparing for a mission, he would go to the post store and load up on water, pop, candy, and smokes. He would then share what he had with other members of the convoy. If he had cigarettes, he would give them, but if it was his special Camel blend, they couldn't touch him. He also would give candy to the kids that they met. Josh was also known as Blockbuster Josh. He had over 400 videos and CDs, which he gladly lent to other members of the 189th as long as they signed his notebook with the name of the video they wanted, the day they checked it out, and the day they would return it. One day, a sergeant came up to him and asked for a video. Josh said, "You can have it as long as you sign the book." The sergeant reminded Josh that he controlled his life, what duty he could assign him to, and if he got paid on time. Josh replied that he understood all that, but he had the videos. The sergeant signed the book. At the end of April, Josh came home on a 2-week leave. He pigged out on steak and potatoes, spent time with his girlfriend, whom he asked to marry him, and spoke to my classes at Pender High School. When he told me he wanted to talk to my classes, I asked him if I was really talking to my son, because he never would have volunteered to talk in front of a large group before he joined the Guard. Josh visited with friends and family. He seemed so relaxed and at peace with himself. During this time, he told me he finally understood why I was so tough on him as he was growing up, that I wanted him to be the best he could be. His girlfriend and I took Josh back to the airport for his return flight to Iraq. As we sat there watching his plane take off, I wondered to myself if it would be the last time that I would see my son. 3 months later, Josh was killed on that fateful night in July, changing my life and that of my family. I think of that night often, sitting in my recliner, watching TV, hoping that Josh will walk through the door and that what had happened would all just be a dream. It is something that I will carry with me the rest of my life. Josh's life was so short but so full at the same time. His smile put you at ease. His cigarettes caused you concern. His love of life gave you hope. His love of those little children showed his compassion. His love of driving those big trucks brought about his end. Josh was a friend to many, a cousin, nephew, grandson, uncle, brother, son, and most of all, our hero. Josh, may you rest in peace, and we will see you again. I purchased a Harley-Davidson Softail Classic at the end of May 2007. I wanted a way to help other families that had to deal with the loss of a loved one, just as I had. I rode my bike the second week of June, escorting home another fallen hero. Since Josh's death, I have taken part in 23 rides, escorting from the airport to the funeral home or attending the funeral of other fallen heroes from Nebraska and Iowa. I never truly understood what sacrifice and patriotism meant before Josh was killed. I now understand what it means when others make the statement, all gave some gave all. With the ultimate sacrifice our young men and women are willing to make and will continue to make, without these patriotic Americans, we will not be able to live in the freest nation in the world. One other thing that I have learned since Josh's death is that death affects families in many different ways. It can bring them closer together, remembering the great sacrifice that their loved ones made for them and this great nation, or it can cause families to split and never be brought back together again. One good thing that has come out of Josh's ultimate sacrifice is it allowed me to meet many of his friends, and he had so many more than I ever knew about. It means a lot to me to hear stories about Josh and how much they miss him.
It has also brought about many new friends into my life. Not only other Gold Star family members, but also members of the PGR, the American Legion Riders, the military, and others who are just patriotic Americans. We also cannot ever forget the great sacrifices that our veterans have made for this nation. They have given us part of their lives so that we can have the freedom to speak out against the policies we don't agree with, to attend assemblies, and to participate in the religion of our choice. I made a statement at my son's funeral that I wanted each person there to go home that day and hug their family members and tell them how much they loved them, because you never know what the future holds. I'm asking you to do the same thing when you go home today. I also asked them to go up to our veterans and current military personnel, wherever they were, and shake their hand and tell them how much we appreciate the sacrifices they have made for us. Sometimes you get a strange look because they don't know you, but then they will smile with that understanding that you want to thank them and support them for their service. Please shake the hand of our Veterans Day and anyone in uniform that you encounter in the future and tell them thank you. I have one last poem I would like to read to conclude my speech. It's called The Final Roll Call, and it's by an anonymous writer. We thought about you with love today, but that is nothing new. We thought about you yesterday and the days before that too. We think of you in silence. We often speak your name. Now all we have are memories and your picture in a frame. Your memory is our keepsake with which we'll never part. God has you in his keeping. We have you in our heart. Thank you for inviting me to speak to you today, and God bless each and every one of you.
Thank you, Wally. That was a very heartfelt speech. As some of you, we get done today, I'd encourage you to walk around and see some of the items we have today to honor our Kansans that have fallen. We also have over here to my right, your left, those were made by one of the Indian reservations down in Oklahoma, I believe. Is that right, Deb? DAV? Okay. As well as we have a table in the back too, and etching for the POW MIA. Symbol about that table for some of the young folks in the room, let me just briefly talk to you about that. It's a tradition for a fallen soldier's table to be at any dining or mess hall in our armed forces. The table is set for one is small, symbolizing the frailty of our isolated prisoner. The table is round to represent everlasting concern on the part of the survivor for their missed loved ones. The tablecloth is white, symbolizing the purity of their intention to respond to their country's call to arms. A single rose in a vase signifies the blood that may have shed in sacrifice to ensure the freedom of our beloved United States of America. This rose also reminds us of our beloved family and friends, or our missing comrades who keep the faith while awaiting their return. A yellow ribbon around the vase represents the yellow ribbon worn on the lapels of thousands who demand the unyielding determination, a proper accounting of all comrades who are not among us tonight or today. A slice of lemon is on a plate representing the bitter fate of the missing. Salt sprinkled on the plate symbolizes the countless fallen tears of families as they wait. An inverted glass on the table represents the fact that the missing and fallen cannot partake of food and drink at this table. The Bible represents the spiritual strength and faith to sustain those lost from our country. A candle is reminiscent of the light of hope which lives in our hearts to illuminate their way home, away from their captors, to open the arms of a grateful nation. And then the empty chair represents the missing and fallen who aren't present. In conclusion, I just want to say thank you to, again, from our auxiliary, our riders, our sons, and the Legion, of course, for all you attending today. It's a special occasion, and again, take your time. We have this event open to the public from 9 to 7, from today through Saturday. And there's a jar in the back. We had donations from Quality Monuments as well, and they're giving a flagpole with a flag. If you just want to enter it, you don't have to give anything. It's a free will donation if you want to do so. As we close, we will do one last thing, and we'll have a moment of silence. And when you hear taps, those of you veterans in attendance, would you please present the proper arms when taps is played? So if you all would rise for a moment of silence. Present arms. Two. Thank you.
You know, we don't ask for people's sympathy because that's not going to bring our loved ones home. And I know it's tough, and sometimes people don't know what to say, or heck, I don't even know what to say. But we don't want people to feel bad for us. We just want their support in supporting our military and our veterans that are here at home.
Handle it one day at a time. That's the only way you can get through it. It never gets easier. You just learn to live with it.
And make the most of your day. You never know when our last goodbyes will be.